I'd like to introduce Darryll Shaw, who is BC, British Canoeing Coach and Partnership Manager. Darryll, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave, and good evening, everyone. And I just want to, first of all, just start off by saying thank you to Dave and with Dave for inviting me along this evening and for hosting us all. I guess when I first started talking to Dave about this, I said we'd probably go for a bit of an informal feel. And then I've got a branded PowerPoint. I'm wearing my work T-shirt, and I've got a branded background. So I seem to have gone a bit formal at the last minute. But for me, it is definitely an opportunity to share the changes to the Leadership Awards, and also to answer questions that folks might have. Kind of got a three-stage presentation this evening that kind of talks a little bit about how we got here, what the changes actually look like, and then a little bit of signposting towards resources and further information. I'm really open to questions this evening, so please do ask them. And I guess all I would say is if we can keep them on leadership initially, that would just help the flow for everyone that's here for the presentation. And then if there are broader questions towards the end of the session, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So if audio and visual is doing what we're expecting, Dave, I'll make a start. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So as Dave said, I'm British Canoeing's coaching and partnership manager, but I'm also the responsible officer for Paddles Up training. So my presentation kind of bounces a little bit between giving an awarding body UK and international perspective on the changes, as well as signposting towards Paddles Up training, which is British Canoeing's delivery centre brand. And I know that on this call this evening, we've got a mix of people, aspirant leaders, club chairpersons and providers and aspirant providers. So hopefully it'll support everybody and you can get what you need from the presentation this evening. Oh dear, sorry, straight away failed with advancing through slides way too quickly. I think where I wanted to start was just kind of to give you a bit of reassurance that this isn't a COVID-19 set of changes. It's not something that British Canoeing has rushed into. Back in 2016, British Canoeing went on the road and talked to members, coaches, leaders, providers, and got a lot of feedback around our coaching leadership qualifications and awards. And there was a real clear need for us as an organisation to update, change, and ensure that those qualifications actually supported the paddle sport community and the work and the paddling and the leading and the guiding that community was doing. So between 2017 and 2021, we set out to review all of our coaching and leadership qualifications, and leadership was always scheduled for review in 2020 with launch in 2021, with the coaching awards happening first. So throughout 2019 and the first part of 2020, there was a huge amount of information gathered from people that had undertaken the leadership awards, clubs, centres, organisations that used leaders, as well as the delivery centres, the providers, and across the working groups there was representation from clubs, professional organisations, centres, organisations, individual guides and leaders, both from the UK and further afield. What was really interesting to us is that all of those groups actually were saying the same things, the same priorities, the same observations that were being made were consistent or broadly consistent across all of the groups. So what that allowed us to do was to design a framework, and the key highlights of the framework are on the screen at the moment. One of the real priorities that was coming through across all of the consultation was that we were being challenged and we were being asked why, if I am an advanced whitewater kayaker, do I have to pass a leadership award in moderate water before I can even attempt to start doing my training or my assessment in advanced water? And the answer to that question was, well, actually, you don't. And in line with our educational philosophy, we've now enacted that ability for those with experience, with those with significant experience, personal skills, knowledge, to be able to access advanced conditions directly if that's what they want to do. Another piece of information that was consistent across all the groups was that actually having to do a formal training course for many people was a barrier, and actually many people had access to support networks through their club, through their college, through their university, or through work, that actually meant the formal training wasn't necessary in their development journey, or actually they were finding that they weren't getting much from it. And actually, in some cases, even finding a training course on dates that suited their busy work lives and family time was incredibly challenging. So again, if somebody has the appropriate experience, appropriate knowledge, appropriate skills, they can enter assessments directly. Changing the way that assessments run means that we're able to assess people in shorter periods of time on a more personal basis. So single day assessments, whilst they are going to be logistically challenging, are possible. So we're able to run assessments in shorter periods of time with smaller groups, which means that if we do have to postpone because water conditions, weather, water levels are not appropriate for the assessment, at least when we're rearranging that, it's a smaller group of people we're trying to coordinate. New disciplines to represent the changes in paddle sport around the United Kingdom, as well as taking the time to ensure that there are more resources for aspirant leaders and existing leaders to be able to access. And that was a key thing for us, certainly coming out of the feedback that we received, was that actually a lot of our leaders and leadership candidates felt that they got much better support when they were training to be a coach when you compare it to the support and resources when becoming a leader. So part of these changes was a launch of several new resources, and I'll talk a little bit more about those towards the end. The final thing that came out from the review is that our rafting qualifications had been left behind. They were off to one side and separate to our leadership awards. They hadn't been modernized across the years, and their training requirements, the requirements to become a trainer or assessor of those awards was a huge barrier to the rafting qualifications being delivered. So those are the big changes across the whole framework. So those sort of headlines are: shorter assessments are possible, lower ratio assessments, direct entry to assessment for those with the appropriate knowledge, skills and experience, and the ability to directly access the environment that you want to lead in rather than having to jump through several environments to get to where you want to be. Gonna have just a quick look at the different awards that are now available and the sort of the typical framework around them, and then we'll have a question break in a couple of minutes' time. Okay. So we now have lots of different options for people who want to be involved in leading paddle sport activity. Many of our disciplines continue to be represented. So for example, our surf kayak leader hasn't had a huge amount of change. It's still available in the moderate and advanced surf conditions, but the framework around it has changed. So if you are a competent surfer with experience of leading, you can go direct to assessment. There isn't a requirement to find a training course. Sea kayak, we've taken this as an opportunity to allow leaders to work or to choose to work in both tidal or non-tidal conditions. And that Sea Kayak Leader non-tidal and Advanced Sea Kayak Leader non-tidal has some really great opportunities to open up our qualifications being used on the Mediterranean, on the Great Lakes, but not just abroad. There's also some places around the UK, Loch Tay and Rutland Water are two examples where we have clubs and organisations doing advanced trips in sea and touring boats, but they don't need that broader sea kayak remit. We have stand-up paddleboard leadership options for the first time, both in open water and in coastal water settings. We have a Stadium Whitewater Award to support those who live locally to, or the majority of their paddling is in a stadium environment, such as Lee Valley or Home Pierpoint or Pinkston or Cardiff. So it gives clubs and organisations a qualification that people can use to guide trips in those environments. Paddlesport Leader was introduced in 2016, at the start of 2017, and it's been phenomenally successful in the sheltered water environment, allowing leaders to work with multidisciplinary groups. And we felt that the time was right for us to introduce a follow-on in that arena in the Paddlesport Touring Leader. And I say follow-on because that's the language that kind of trips off my head. But as I said before, there's no requirement to be a Paddlesport Leader before becoming a Paddlesport Touring Leader. Paddlesport Touring Leader, of all of these qualifications, I'm really excited about all of them, but for me, Paddlesport Touring Leader is a real game changer for clubs, for organizations, for individuals who are working in that freelance capacity. The remit is huge: open inland water, up to 500 meters offshore, force 4 winds, grade 1 rivers that include weirs and occasional sections of grade 2. Assessed in the craft of your choice, able to lead multi-craft journeys. So we really do think that Paddlesport Touring Leader is fantastic for a club paddler wanting to take more responsibility, a centre or an organisation looking for a qualification that supports their client groups on the water. And I'm going to use Paddlesport Touring Leader as a couple of our examples after the question break, just to share that a little bit more. There's a couple of other changes. Our Whitewater Kayak Leader has changed to Whitewater Leader, and that's a reflection of how paddle sport is evolving. And what we were finding is that whitewater kayakers are still there, they exist, and they have a fantastic time on the water, but we're seeing more and more people in the UK paddling specialist open canoes. We're seeing more and more people in the UK using sit-on-tops, specially designed sit-on-tops in whitewater, pack rafts, and in inflatable craft on whitewater. So by taking the word kayak out, and obviously making some changes to the assessment criteria, we've actually made that award much more accessible to everyone that's leading in a whitewater environment, whilst maintaining that traditional open canoe route for those that want to paddle traditional open canoe in whitewater and be involved in some of the traditional skills that come with that. Final thing on this slide before we move on is just the separation of whitewater and open water for the canoe remit. And we've done that for a couple of different reasons. The feedback that we were getting during the consultation is there are people all around the UK that live in areas where they have access to one or the other of the environments for Canoe Leader, and it becomes quite time consuming and a barrier to gaining the award to have to go and paddle in the other environment. So in the east of England, lots of open water, not very much white water. Yeah, North Wales and the Lake District can be feast or famine. So, you know, you might have a great whitewater season, but really struggle to get on open water, or vice versa. So the separation allows the individual to pick up those qualifications at a pace that's appropriate for them, but equally still get assessed for both environments in the same 2-day window as they would have done with the previous canoe and advanced canoe leader. So some really exciting changes there. For the raft guide qualifications, just running down the right-hand side of the screen as I look at it, there's also a better separation of the grading system there, so that raft guides can develop as their career develops. So what we got from the feedback and the consultation is that a raft guide will often work in a particular area and then work in a new area and build their experience. So actually needing to paddle in grade 3, 4 to work on their local grade 2 river was a real barrier. So separating them out there gives choice to the rafting community. So as an overview, before we have a question break, the pathway, if we take 3 steps backwards and look at this holistically, we're still expecting training. We're still expecting our aspirant leader to have some sort of training, but we're not dictating where that training comes from. That training can be through peer paddling, through club, through their mentor, through a centre, through an organisation, through their college or university. They build experience, they gain that experience, go for assessment. Registration is still a requirement, but it comes just before an individual goes for assessment, which means that once someone is registered, they can be confident that they can go for their assessment knowing all of their prerequisites, all of their paperwork is in place. There's no longer any confusion where you register for training, then have to remember to get some safety training and a first aid before going for assessment. So less paperwork at the start of assessments as a result. For this year, we felt it was really important that there was no changes in pricing. So from a British Canoeing perspective, registrations have been frozen. Registrations are still £39. And for anyone that's currently progressing through a leadership award and you've been caught by the change because of weather, COVID, and local restrictions, there are ways to transfer those registrations free of charge, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Again, I'm going to talk about this in more detail a little bit later, but significantly more support for aspirant leaders than we've ever had before. Self-analysis tools, free e-learning packages, resources, as well as the broader resources on the British Canoeing Awarding Body digital library. Okay. So I did promise a question break. Sorry that I've just hit you with a big introduction, but it kind of gets us going. Before we go into questions, Dave, I guess just as a heads up, I am in the next section going to be talking about the safety and navigation training requirements prior to assessment, the other prerequisites before assessment and what a typical assessment will look like. In the last section, I'll be talking about the resources and just between the two, impact on existing individuals, existing leaders and aspirant leaders. So if there's any questions that might be useful just to park for 20 minutes till we get to that bit, then I'll leave that in your capable hands.
Okay, thank you, Darryll. Okay, so the first question we've got is from one of the Pauls. I'm not sure which Paul it was, and Paul is waving his hand. Okay, so Paul, if you want to unmute your mic and ask Darryll the question, please.
Down there. Yeah, the BCU has for some of its awards, some really good online videos, the FSRT and what have you that are on YouTube. That really, really helps someone understand the level that's expected before they go for assessment. Because I can speak from experience. I've turned up for assessments and actually it's been a damn sight easier than I thought it was going to be. and when you read the words, they can be quite technical and quite off-putting. So could the BCU make some videos so we all know what the assessments and that would actually look like in real life?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Paul, and I'm not going to throw the COVID excuse out there, but that is obviously a contributing factor. A lot of the videos that we've produced in the last 6 months have had to be from stock footage, which works for some things, but it doesn't work for a lot of other things. And every opportunity we get, as restrictions are relaxed, we do go out and start collecting footage. We do have plans to grow the digital library with more resources. Luckily, we'd already done the filming for the freestyle videos and the stand-up paddleboard videos. So yeah, it's in the plan, and we're collecting footage as and when we can. The one thing I will say is to video leadership is quite a challenging thing, particularly participant-focused leadership. But I do take your point, and we are looking to grow that video playlists and stockpile over the coming months and year.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much for that one. Before I ask Ali to ask his question, just like to welcome Ray, who's obviously come hot-footed from his presentation with Canoe Wales to join our paddle chat. Thank you very much for coming, Ray. Ali, you've got a question. Are you unmuted, Ali?
Yeah, that's all right. I've just unmuted myself. We all there? There we go. All good. I was on my laptop, on my tablet, sorry. So with the Touring Leader Award, you're sending sections of grade 1 with, well, sections of grade 1 with the occasional section of grade 2. So what would a river look like in a guidebook? How would it be described in a guidebook in order for a touring leader to be able to access the type of water that they're enabled to lead on?
Yeah, so again, I think it's a great question, Ali. I'll be careful how I word this, but I guess my first instinct is probably that the guidebook would only be one piece of the puzzle when that Paddlesport Touring Leader is deciding where is appropriate for their group. But because you've asked quite a specific question, I'll give you quite a specific answer. So for me, the section of the River Wye that runs between Kernbridge and Monmouth, that has occasional sections of grade 2, Simmons Yachts, for me, that's Paddlesport Touring Leader territory. And I know not everybody will know the why, but I hope there's enough people on the call that would recognize that section to kind of picture that. When we're talking about occasional sections of grade 2, you know, it is occasional, it is simple downstream V with little or low consequence. And because it is a multi-boat or multi-craft group that a Paddlesport Touring Leader is leading, actually within that group, people could make different decisions. Some people might decide to walk around because it's not for them on that particular day. A stand-up paddleboarder might have come for a gentle tour and not be equipped for a section of grade 2, so might choose to walk around. There may be paddlers within the group that might go for it and have a great giggle as they make their way through the waves. But it is an occasional grade 2, and if we are, you know, if we're looking in a guidebook and it's 2 with sections of 3, when that's Whitewater Leader territory. That's not Paddlesport Touring Leader.
Okay, thanks, sir. I've actually just got the wide guide up, actually, and that section you're talking about is grade 1-2 on the wide guide. So I'm guessing that if a river is down specifically as grade 2, that would then be beyond the scope of the Touring Leader.
Yeah, we're talking about occasional. So if we're looking at a pool drop river that has, you know, 10, 12, 13 sections of grade 2, then that would be out of scope.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Okay, lovely. Next question from Tom, please. Tom Thorpe.
Hi there, Darryl. How's it going?
Yeah, good, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. Yesterday, I kind of put a shout out to a few paddlers online just to see what's going on and how people are feeling about everything. People are genuinely excited about the new leadership awards, and they do make sense for some paddlers. There is a little bit of a concern that those kind of skill level kind of performance awards are kind of like not quite such a thing, and the prerequisites for some of the leadership awards aren't quite as kind of strict as they were. And I think people are just saying that there's an awful lot of leaders around, but kind of the level of paddling is potentially not as high as it was for some of those leadership awards. I mean, it might not be a discussion for now, but does that make sense? Is that wrong?
So, I mean, assuming that I've understood the question, I guess what I would be saying is what we've increased or what we've given people is choice. We've given people choice in how they prepare for their assessment, and we've made it possible for assessors to work with those aspirant leaders and design assessments that meet the needs of the qualification, but also the group that they're leading on the day, and the other factors that need to be considered. What we haven't done is made the assessment any easier. And, you know, if you think of our previous assessment structure, you know, you could have feasibly 8 people being assessed in a 2-day window. They potentially are all sharing a group. You know, as an assessor, you're trying to work out how everyone gets a fair stab at leading the more difficult sections of the trip. And actually, by the end of the day, or the 2 days, you've probably only seen each of those leaders lead for 2 hours. The person that's led first has maybe led the hardest section because they've had to get to know the group. Everyone else has followed on behind, observing and profiling the group and getting to know them. So actually, it's not a fair assessment. And often, as an assessor, I would sit back after a busy 2-day assessment and wonder if actually I'd passed the assessment because I'd got the logistics to work. I think what it also does is it opens up a huge amount of opportunities for venues that are local to the aspirant leader, because they can take their normal group and lead on a section of water that suits them and suits the needs of the group, so long as it meets the assessment criteria. So there isn't a need for a big 10-person eddy or big car parks, because it's a smaller, more agile assessment group. So I don't think we've made the assessment any less difficult. We've just changed the way that folks get there. We haven't said you must be a 3-star. I can use that language because of the group that we're talking in. But we have said that our new personal performance awards are good milestones for you to measure your development. You don't have to do them, but they're there if you want them. So yeah, a lot more choice, but no easier assessment, I don't believe.
I'm sure that there's really solid logic behind everything. For me, I'm an advocate of the performance awards and the levels, and I think giving them meaning and fitting them into this, because people don't do them because they're like, well, what's the point? I can't do anything anyway, and no one really cares. Well, I think that in the old days, I'm talking about systems change, but you had to have the level to do the course or the coach qualification. I think that gave them those awards a huge amount of meaning. But anyway, it's all good. You're doing a good job. No,
I think it's honestly, I'm really enjoying. I enjoy being challenged, and I enjoy questions, Tom. You know that. But I think what I would share, just anecdotally, pre-COVID, which has obviously had a bit of an impact on personal performance awards, but our 2019 figures for people doing the personal performance awards more than tripled any prior year of 3-star. So if you remember, we had 1, 2, 3-star, 4 and 5-star with leadership, although I do accept a little bit before that there were higher level personal performance awards. And in 2019, the numbers doing, the 3 discipline specific personal performance awards far outstripped even the busiest 3-star year in the past.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Nice one. Cheers, Darryl.
No worries. Nice to speak to you, Tom.
It's interesting you say about the 4 and 5 star being personal performance awards. I'm sure there's some of us on here that can remember the old advanced proficiency.
I remember them too. So
just before we go on to the next question, Andy came up with a good point, going back to Darryl's question, that the River Severn, including Jackfield, would be a really good example for the Touring Leader Award. So thank you for that, Andy. Next question from PY. Don't know what PY stands for, but
hello. So I'm looking at where you've got the Paddlesport Leader and the Paddlesport Touring Leader. So although you've not included and understand why a specific must be of this standard or that standard, you've listed the requirements instead. How do they equate across to the PPAs? Because some people have PPAs and will want to know whether they feel they're good enough or not. It's similar to Paul's question earlier of judging what the writing is telling you.
yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So in the course guide, in the appendices at the back, there we've put in a table that equates the personal performance awards in comparison to the leadership awards, and that's there and designed to support leaders. Going back to your specific question, Paddlesport Touring Leader, it's a little bit challenging to do that because the aspirant leader chooses the craft that they can be assessed in. So that box is significantly bigger than all the other disciplines because we have to represent stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, touring, canoeing, and all the different options that someone could choose to be assessed in. But yeah, in the course guide at the back, there is a table that does a bit of equating for people.
Okay, I mean, I do British canoeing coach anyway, but also I'm a paddle sports assessor for scouting, and scouting tends to lag for their permits, tend to lag behind changes in British canoeing. So I don't know if you've had discussions with them about how the new awards you've started fit in with their permit scheme.
Yeah, so on the we've done that at a UK level. Rather than doing it as England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So on the awarding body website, there's a section called Working with Other Organisations. And in there's some dual branded scouting and awarding body documents that talk about the permit levelling and how the changes of qualifications map across to the scouting permit levels. We were building a really good relationship with scouting and starting to collaborate on things like that. But the last 12 months has kind of put some spanners in the works, and hopefully we'll get back on that through this year. But there are 3 documents there that go through that mapping: personal performance awards, coaching and leadership, and permits.
Okay. Yeah, because the current Scout technical sheets refer to you need to be of the ability to paddle the canoe award, the leader, and the advanced canoeing leader, which I assume are the previous leadership awards like the ACL.
Yeah, I obviously we can only control the documents that we author, but yeah, we've done our bit, I guess, and I'm sure they'll update them when they get an opportunity.
Because people are starting to show interest in your new awards, and then wondering what they can get from scouting to go with the award. So they want to do the training, they want to pass the award and so on. But it's which one to target them to for where they need to be. So that's part of the challenge.
Yeah,
okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks for those questions. Darryll, just before we ask the next question, in your next part of your presentation, are you covering providership for the awards?
So I haven't technically included any providership information for this evening, but I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end about any particular providership questions.
Okay, lovely. Mark, what we'll do is we'll just park your couple of questions until the end then, so Darryll can crack on with his presentation, if that's okay. Yeah,
that's no problem at all from my perspective. Okay. So like I said, just before we broke for the questions break, and for those of you that have asked questions, thank you very much. And, please do keep those questions coming, because it brings it alive and gives me an opportunity to explain things I might not have included in the presentation. The example that I've put up on the screen here is, I guess, a typical development journey, bearing in mind the slide before the questions, where we had that training experience assessment slide with registration at the top and informal learning opportunities at the bottom. So in this particular example here, our aspirant leader wants to become a Paddlesport Touring Leader. That's their goal. That's what they're working towards. For their own personal development, they've chosen to do the official British Canoeing Paddlesport Touring Leader training. And they could have chosen to do that for lots of different reasons: meeting like-minded people, building their own support network. Maybe they don't have people in their club or lecturers in their college that can support their development in this area. So they've come along on the formal training. Formal trainings can be between 2 and 5 days in duration, and it's actually down to the provider to working with their students to design what's appropriate for them. What's happened during this official training is that the tutor running the training and the aspirant leader have actually come to the realization and agreed that their personal paddling is of the level of the Open Water Touring Award. So they've picked up their Open Water Touring Award as part of their Paddlesport Leader training or Touring Leader training, which is completely permissible. There is no issue with personal performance awards being awarded during training and assessment courses. Once that person has done the training, they've gone off and they've started that experience gathering phase. And this particular person has chosen a mix of formal and informal opportunities. They've decided to go and get their multi-day touring award because they want their personal skills to be tested to ensure that they don't have to worry about their personal skills at assessment. They don't have to do a whitewater safety and rescue course, but this individual has chosen to do so because of the inclusion of grade 1 and grade 2 water in the remit for the award. And during the assessment, there is a requirement to deal with simple problems that you come across in grade 2. Whitewater safety and rescue is pitched at grade 2-3 whitewater paddler, so it's not a mandatory prerequisite, but this person chose to do it. First aid, safeguarding, mandatory. So they've picked those bits up and they've chosen to do coastal navigation, tidal planning. Again, it's not mandatory, but they've chosen to do it because it will help them with their trip planning responsibilities. They've utilized the leadership self-analysis tool to keep track of their progress and their development, use that with their mentor to help them track how they've been getting on, and they've used some of the free e-learning. Got all of that in place, as well as some practical experience of leading groups, registered, confirmation they can go for assessment, and gone for assessment. So that's probably a pathway that we're familiar with. I think if I tried to map out every possible conceivable pathway, I could probably talk to you for 365 days straight, because it really is down to each individual and the experiences they're bringing in. But this is just an example of someone taking a slightly different journey, maybe starting with the self-analysis tool, taking a measure of where they are in comparison to Paddlesport Touring Leader, sharing that with a mentor, taking time, sitting down and developing a development plan to support them through to that assessment. They've chosen to pick up several personal performance awards on their journey. They've used free e-learning, and at a point, they've shown enough competence that their club has allowed them to start taking more responsibility on trips. Maybe that's with an existing qualified leader or coach mentoring them, but they're building their experience on real trips. They've chosen to do their Paddlesport Leader assessment, and they take more responsibility within the club, and they're actually planning sheltered water trips independently and working with a mentor or a more experienced leader on moderate water trips. Keep checking in on that self-assessment tool. The club clubs together or uses club funds, brings in a provider to run a safety skills workshop. So this person isn't doing whitewater safety and rescue. They're actually getting someone to come to the club and run a safety workshop specific to the Paddlesport Touring Leader environment, continuing to build their experience before going for assessment. Although there are some formal things in there, completely informal, direct to assessment approach. I did say I would talk about the link between safety and navigation. So for the sea-based qualifications, coastal navigation tidal planning is still a requirement. Moderate water, open water navigation tidal planning is a requirement at the advanced level. Stand-up paddleboard coastal leader also requires coastal navigation tidal planning. Advanced surf leader, the advanced surf safety and rescue, and then the whitewater leader, canoe whitewater leader, advanced canoe whitewater leader, and advanced whitewater leader, respectively, whitewater safety and rescue and advanced whitewater safety and rescue. Again, the separation of the canoe environments does create a slightly fairer playing field for those that want to be assessed in the open water environment, because it means that they no longer need to go and get a whitewater safety and rescue training, whereas the combined award did require that. I think it's important to remember at this point, or to share with you at this point, just that we do have equivalencies that are already agreed and established. So if you are working towards becoming a leader in the sea or coastal environment, and you're a sailor, or you've got powerboating qualifications with the Royal Yachting Association, we've already mapped out which of those qualifications count as coastal navigation and open water navigation training courses. If we haven't got them on our list of qualifications that are already mapped, then you are able to apply for accreditation of prior learning, demonstrate your experience, and if we find that it's equivalent to our safety or navigation course, then you're able to skip it and go straight to assessment. Again, not making the assessment any easier, but acknowledging you've already got that learning from another place. Same for Rescue 3 awards and whitewater safety and advanced whitewater safety. Okay. Registration is a requirement for every leadership award, safety and navigation if it's applicable. Across all of the awards, there's a requirement for appropriate first aid. If the leadership award is in the sheltered water environment, it's a one-day first aid that's required as a minimum. If it's moderate or advanced conditions, then it's 2-day first aid as a minimum. Everyone requires some form of safeguarding training. You need your National Association membership at the point of assessment, and sheltered water and moderate water leadership awards. The assessment can take place from 16. For the advanced awards, assessment can take place from 18. There are no age restrictions on training. There are no age restrictions on any of the prerequisites, although you would need to consider carefully what safeguarding training was appropriate to someone that was under 16 years of age. So we've removed all of the age requirements from whitewater safety, coastal navigation tidal planning, open water navigation tidal planning, to allow those under 16 to be able to prepare for assessment. Okay. What does that assessment look like? It's going to be down to each individual set of circumstances, because the assessment will be agreed between the assessor and the aspirant leader. What we're looking to assess as part of that assessment is your leadership skills, personal skills, and your ability to complete the rescues. your ability to lead a safe, enjoyable, quality journey, and skillful application of leadership principles, decision-making, safety awareness, and risk management. And because of the change to the way the assessments are being structured, you're actually able to build a much bigger picture of an individual leader coming into assessment. You're able to take more responsibility for your own assessment. You're able to select the venue. You're able to organize your own group. And actually, it is your assessment rather than you just being a candidate on an assessment that has been organized for you. We definitely have been moving as an organization towards learner-led assessments for a while. And actually, this change is supporting what assessors were already doing as part of their assessments, but it's supporting them and giving them more time to actually use those assessments as a learning opportunity for you as well. So we do see assessments as a milestone on your journey rather than the end destination. So you should be able to get learning advice and guidance whilst being assessed. One more section, and then we're going to kind of go back into questions. And I did just want to say what the impact on current learners would be. So if you're partway through your canoe leader or your advanced canoe leader, then as I said earlier on, you're still able to be assessed in both environments. But that changes nothing for you personally, but the assessor just needs 2 course codes rather than 1 course code if you want to be assessed, say, Saturday in whitewater and Sunday in open water. At the moment, you might have a registration for canoe leader or advanced canoe leader. By contacting your National Association coaching department, you're able to get a free transfer from canoe leader to either or both of the new qualifications, free of charge. It's just a paperwork exercise in the system so that you've got the appropriate registration. For anyone that was working towards specialist open canoe leader, either moderate or advanced, those qualifications no longer exist. But as I said earlier on, specialist open canoe is now completely embedded and represented in the whitewater leader and advanced whitewater leader. Registration transfers again are free of charge, but it is just a case of being able to access those trainings and assessments, and all assessors being able to assess specialist open canoe, whitewater kayak, sit on tops, pack rafts, whatever it might be you're using as the particular craft you want to be assessed in. The same, I'm not going to list through every single leadership qualification, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear, but that same free transfer of registration exists across all the awards. So if you're registered for whitewater kayak leader and you now need to pick up a whitewater leader assessment, again, it's just a change of registration and it's free of charge. For anybody worried about their leadership training coming to an end and the old 3-year expiry that was in place, the leadership changes from the 4th of January have abolished all leadership training expiry dates, which means regardless of when you did your leadership training, you can still access assessment. You know, there is no barrier to someone, you know, whether your leadership training was last year, 5 years ago. If you want to access an assessment, you can, because of that direct entry to assessment framework. For those of you that have existing leadership qualifications, there is no impact. They continue to be recognized. They continue to be supported. They will continue to appear in our documentation, explaining to clubs, centres, organisations your remit and what your assessment looked like and what you're qualified to do. So there's no requirement for anyone to transfer or retake assessments unless it's something that you wanted to do, but there's certainly nothing from a British canoeing perspective or no impact from a British canoeing perspective. Existing leaders can access all of the free materials as part of their own developments should they choose to. So I think that's probably another good stop for some questions there, Dave.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So first is these are provider questions, I think, mainly. So the first one is Mark has got a couple of questions, please.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully I have the right button. Okay. Maybe best to start asking is who can assess Paddlesport Leader? And I have two other questions. I will try to combine them because I think you tipped it already on. Could you explain where the 4 5-star where are in the new model, and what about the old people with all the qualifications? Is there a kind of update, upgrade, recommendation, or will you suggest what they can best do?
Yeah, no problem, Mark-Jan. I'll answer I guess for the first one, because all of the provider roles are on the National Association websites with detailed provider requirements. I'd encourage anyone that's interested in being a provider to go and have a look at those pages, and there's an entire provider section on Paddles Up training that details each providership, because there are hard skills and there are soft skills. For Paddlesport Leader, we're looking for someone that has canoe, kayak, and stand-up paddleboard knowledge, skills, and experience. We're looking at that to be in a sheltered water environment. So we're looking at level 2 coach or coach award, canoe and kayak. At the moment, because our qualifications are still bedding in for stand-up paddleboard, we are looking for people that are stand-up paddleboard coaches, but also accepting other experience of coaching stand-up paddleboarding. Maybe that's with Water Skills Academy, ASI, B Super, or through holding a British Canoeing SUP DSM and using it in your club or centre environment. So we're looking at a broad coach who can assess any of the disciplines that the aspirant Paddlesport Leader could choose to be assessed in. So yeah, and for the touring leader, we're looking for at least one, if not more, moderate qualifications, because we're looking at open water, we're looking at sheltered tidal water, and we're looking at river up to grade 2. So we would expect an aspirant provider to have at least one of those disciplines in the moderate environment, but actually looking for them to have several would be the perfect scenario. So that's that question. The second question, I've got to admit, I'm really sorry. It's just jumped out of my head because I was concentrating on answering the first one. So would you mind just reposing that second question for me?
Basically, where is the 4 and the 5-star when we talk about old money in the new model? And what can people do with the older qualifications, like the 4 or 5-star, to maybe upgrade themselves in the knowledge? So what was your recommendation?
Yeah, so somebody that holds 4-star leader or 5-star leader has the remit that they earned when they passed that qualification, when they passed it. So nothing has changed, nothing is being taken away. If somebody wanted to update themselves, either because their CPD is coming up or because they're interested, then really there's as many options for an existing leader as there are for an aspirant leader. You know, we've got our free leadership e-learning, which talks about British Canoeing's philosophy around leadership. We've got academic papers around leadership. We've got resources around multi-trip guiding, multi-craft trips. Sorry, we've got e-learning around leading in unfamiliar environments, and all of these are free resources that are part of the the awarding body digital library. So there is no, unless somebody wants to lead in a more complex environment than they currently are qualified to do, that there's no reason for them to engage with the new awards unless they want to lead in that more complex environment or lead a different type of craft. So yeah, there is no need to upgrade, or I wouldn't even use that language. You still have the qualification that you gained. You still have that remit, yeah, we will continue to recognise them until we don't exist anymore, I guess.
Lovely, thanks, Darryll. I have got a question from Ali. We're going to leave Ali just for a minute because I think we've had another question in from Chris Mountford. Mountford, sorry, about remits. So I think that's a good place to pick this up, if you don't mind. So, Chris, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask Darryll a question.
Yep.
Yep. Darryll, so it's just specifically regarding the whitewater. So I haven't recently passed advanced whitewater kayak. Would I, if I want to lead OC1, would I then need to do essentially repeat the assessment to gain that extension to my remit, or is that something that would be kind of, if I feel I've got the experience of leading that, is that something that would be my sort of personal judgment?
Yeah, so I guess it would depend on your personal circumstances, Chris. But if you felt that you were competent, then leading an OC1 paddler who is competent to paddle with your group, and you and your group and understanding the benefits and limitations of having an OC1 paddler in your group, then crack on is what I would say. If you feel like you would need more support, then we do have a guidance document that talks about leading multi-craft trips, and we do have guidance document which was written with providers in mind, but it's open and it's accessible to all, which actually talks about incorporating OC1 paddlers into whitewater leader and advanced whitewater leader assessments. If you felt you wanted more support, then I would suggest that someone who is an OC1 paddler, coach, leadership provider, spending half a day or a day with you, on the water, looking at those issues, is probably more beneficial than repeating an assessment. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend repeating an assessment under any circumstance unless you particularly wanted to do that. I think there's several different learning and development options depending on your personal comfort and competence.
Brilliant, that's great. Cheers, Darryll.
Thank you for that question. Okay, Darryll, have you got your cocoa and sleeping bag handy? Because it's Ali Othen again, I'm afraid.
That's just rude. Right, okay. Right, mate. So I've got three actually, but I'll try and merge them. So okay. We've obviously got a backlog of provider events and community events at the minute. Mm-hmm. And then also you said to me previously that you were going to open up new applications for providers in April. Are they still going to sort of go ahead, or are those two things going to merge now, or is there? I know COVID's got in the way and we can't really do anything until we know what's going on with the government as such, but is there any ideas as to how we're going to move forward with that?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of things that we've already done, and for existing providers that were already qualified to provide leadership awards in the environment, for the new awards, we've put in place appropriate controls so that they can start running those courses, and they'll attend community learning events throughout the rest of this year as and when we can. For orientations for new providers, we have a bunch of dates agreed with the national trainers, and it is literally just a case of when Boris and his team give us a little bit of notice of when schools are going back, we think that that's an appropriate trigger for us to then start sharing those plans more widely, getting people booked on, and hopefully moving those events forward. I still intend to open applications in March and April for all providerships, because I think it's an important part of our development as an organization, and we've promised that those opportunities will be there, and I'm not one for reneging on promises. New providers applying and coming in, it takes a little while for us to go through the application process and then line them up. So actually those new providers will probably only start accessing community events and orientations come the winter and autumn and winter, of 21 and early part of 22. So and unless something massively changes, I don't intend to change what I've promised. And there will be opportunities across coaching and leadership providers advertised in March and April.
Okay, that makes sense. Cheers for that. And the other one that I had was, say I become a sea kayak tidal, non-tidal provider as such, that then, because if you look at the personal performance required, basically the person who's going to be leading that, you're looking at somebody who's going to be able to pass the coastal sea kayak award.
Yep.
Would you then, sort of in combination of becoming a sea kayak leader provider, also then get the personal performance award equivalent providership alongside that as well?
Yes, what we don't want to do is we don't want to load people's records up with a bunch of providerships they'll never use, and them be committed to the moderation and update requirements. But if someone is a sea kayak tidal and non-tidal provider, and they want to become a coastal sea kayak provider, they need only ask, and we'll put it on their record, because you're quite right, they will have proven their competence assessing leadership in that environment, so they should be able to assess personal performance.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much for that. Cheers.
Okay, lovely, Darryll. I'm really conscious of the time, so we just have 3 more questions and then we're done. Okay.
Yeah,
so
just sorry, Dave, before you go on to the next question, I know we had a finish time in mind,
yeah,
but I've got a little more chunk of presentation, and as long as people are happy listening to me drone on, I'm happy to keep going.
That's really good. Thank you very much. Okay, I think having looked at the questions, I think they could wait to the end. So if you want to carry on with your presentation, and then we'll pick those questions up at the end.
Okay, well, no problem. And this next section just really is talking about some of the resources, and it is just a series of screen grabs. And once I've highlighted where they are, if you're interested in looking at them in more detail, then more than welcome to. I am aware that we've got a mix of folks on the line this evening, and some folks are members of British Canoeing, some folks are members of Canoe Wales and SEA, etc. So we're going to start with the awarding body website, because that's the one that everyone has got access to, and it's where everything sits from a regulatory perspective. So under award documents, in the leadership documents section, you'll find all of the guidance documents for all of the new leadership awards. The way that that's structured is that there are some general documentation at the start, and you can see on the screen there things like the guidance for whitewater leader providers wanting to include OC1, C1 in their courses that I was talking about a few minutes ago, Chris. In there, you can see exactly what your assessment will look like, what it is that you need to be able to demonstrate as part of your assessment, be able to share that with your mentor, be able to share that with your community if you're looking at informal training to help you prepare for assessment. What there's also within the learning and development section is a specific leadership and raft guide resources section. And once you're in that area, you can find all of our raft guide video playlist, some e-learning, and some facilitated YouTube videos around buzz of weirs in leadership, leading mixed craft journeys, our leadership model, e-learning, and all of those resources are there. They're available all the time, 24/7, and there's no cost associated with them. What you'll also find in that area is the leader and raft guide self-analysis, which is just a really nice tool. If you've used the coach self-analysis tool, it's very similar. You go in, there's a variety of different titles, and you score yourself against the criteria for leadership award, and at the end of it you get an analysis of particular areas you might want to focus on before your assessment. It is a personal reflection, so it isn't logged. You're under no obligation to share it with anyone else. It's for you, and it's only as good as the person filling it in. So if you're honest, it'll give you a good reflection back. As I've talked about during the presentation, there's also an article and some notes there around leading mixed craft journeys. And there's also some resources that help you with journey planning and logging experience as you're preparing for your assessment. It's also the place where we store all of our guidance documents that are generic across all 4 national associations and qualification delivery centres. So if you are interested, like you were a few minutes ago, Mark-Jan, in what you can do and what your old money, using the phrase that you use, qualification, can allow you to do, then this document around environmental definitions takes you through that and maps out in a simple table the remit of each of our leadership awards, and goes back as far as the 4-star leader. There is also a table within the document that I haven't screenshot, which goes back a little bit further and includes British Canoe Union Level 3, Level 4, Level 5 coach. On Paddles Up Training, which is British Canoeing's Qualification Delivery Centre website, there are further resources that are available as well. It's also possible to find courses on that site using the Finder, find course providers and assessors. All of the leadership qualifications are on there, as well as all of the leadership provider requirements. And it goes into detail about why you might choose to be a Paddlesport Touring Leader, guide you through the registration process, what the content of the training will look like, what your assessment might look like, and also, again, it gives you an opportunity to pick up those courses that were already organised on the Booking Now section. So that's the planned presentation, Dave. I did say the last section was a quick one because it's more signposting than actual fly through. So yeah, let's pick up the rest of those leadership questions first, and then go a bit more open Q&A if that's okay with you.
Yeah, lovely. So the first one is Clint, please.
Hello, just had to unmute it. Yeah, no, I was wondering about this stadium courses, really, that you're doing. How they help progress us onto other qualifications, and well, what they actually entail for us doing. I mean, how long do they go on for? Things, is it a one-day course? Is it even a half-day course?
Yeah, it's a great question, Clint. And in essence, the Stadium Leader, whilst it's in the same framework as the other leadership qualifications, it is slightly different. And as you quite rightly have pointed out, a typical stadium paddling session is that it's a session, isn't it? So, you know, you're more likely to go for 2 hours at Lee Valley when the water's turned on, and probably for the majority of us, unless we're superhuman, 2 hours is enough for a day. And that's exactly what the assessment looks like. So an assessment would be leading in a typical session. So, you know, if it's possible for us to see all of the requirements of the leadership assessment in a 2-hour water session at Lee Valley or a half-day water session at Home Pierpoint, then that's the structure of the assessment. Training courses are the same as all the other awards, are optional, and you can pick up your experience and prepare for the assessment in any particular way that you would like to, but there is a training course available. It is a 2-day training course, but again, it will depend on which venue it is run at. What I wouldn't necessarily expect is for a Lee Valley Stadium whitewater leader to be 2 full days on the water, A, because of the cost, and B, because again, you'd need to be superhuman for 2 full days on the Olympic course. So yeah, it is tailored to and specific around that stadium environment. The leadership is very much around leading in a stadium environment, and we would see it as a natural stepping stone to whitewater leader if somebody works or lives locally to their stadium, so that, you know, they become a stadium whitewater leader and later become a whitewater leader. For whitewater leaders, there's no requirement to do the stadium award. If you know your local stadium well and you've already gone through your competency checks at Lee Valley or Home Pierpoint or whatever, you know, this isn't a new qualification that's going to stop whitewater leaders and whitewater coaches working at stadiums. It's an option for stadium paddlers who find it difficult to access natural rivers.
Okay, thank you. I've got one other question, if I may, please.
Yeah.
I did 4-star touring training course a while back, and I never managed to get an assessor to assess me. Since you're doing the touring again, would this be able to progress towards that, or would it be irrelevant me even doing it in the first place now?
It kind of would depend on your own circumstances and what it is that you want to achieve. But the Paddlesports Touring Leader is a similar remit to the 4-star touring that was removed in 2017, but it is not the same remit because of the grade 2 inclusion, particularly, and more flexibility around weirs. So it would depend what you want and why you want it, but taking your training and the experience you've built up into that assessment is perfectly possible. In terms of finishing the 4-star touring, unfortunately, we had a 3-year window from April 2017 for anyone that wanted to finish that. So we can't do any 4-star touring assessments now. But as I said, the Paddlesport Touring Leader is a great qualification, and if it's right for you, that's what I'd recommend.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thanks so much. Next question from James Gary, please.
Hi, Darryl. The coastal navigation and tidal planning seems to be getting rolled out quite significantly online, I imagine as a result of lockdown, etc. Is the open water one likely to go the same way?
The open water one has gone the same way. The number of people accessing open water navigation tidal planning is generally less. So we see about 700 people do CNTP a year, probably about 100 do OWNTP. And I think the providers they're making their mistakes and learning their online delivery with CNTP, and the open water should come quickly after. But yeah, we've got providers out there who are allowed to run it online now. They obviously have just got to prepare resources, etc.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Okay, and the last question we've got at the moment is from Lewis.
Hi, Darryl. Good to see you again.
Hi, Lewis. How are you?
Good, thank you. Just a real quick one. You've spoken a little bit about the provider scheme and getting into access onto that. Are people from Canoe Wales, like myself, able to access the English providership scheme? Because at the minute, a lot of us are struggling getting access to providers or providership schemes in Wales.
So each national association delivery centre is responsible for its own recruitment, but where the community learning events, the orientations, the moderations have no borders. So, you know, if you've had a successful application with Canoe Wales and you're struggling to get on an orientation that Canoe Wales is running, you are more than welcome to join a British Canoeing, an SCA or a CanI one. There's no issue with that at all. But each national association manages its own applications. So your application would have to go through Canoe Wales.
No, that's great. It's more the kind of training element that we're struggling with getting. So,
yeah, no, they are completely open, and yeah, I've had loads of my providers going on Welsh events because water levels just happen to work on the dates that they were planned. So yeah, it works both ways.
Cool, fab. Thank you, Darryll.
Brilliant, Darryll. Thanks so much. That's all the questions that we've got, unless somebody comes in with a quick question. So Darryll, once again, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Some great questions, and thanks very much.
PY said he's got a question.
Oh, sorry. PY's got a quick question.
He needs to, that's it.
Yes, the unmute thing for the century. On stadiums, I'm curious, because obviously it says on the award that it covers all stadiums. But if you've done your training and assessment on the Neen, there's obviously a big difference between that and, say, the Olympic course on Lee Valley.
Yeah, it's a good observation, and in essence, the assessment needs to run at the top end of the remit of the award. So the assessor would need to work with you to assess inappropriate conditions. That doesn't mean that all assessments need to happen at Lee Valley, but what it does mean is that an assessment is more likely to have to run at Home Pier Point, Lee Valley, Cardiff, and that I can't imagine circumstances where the NEN would be suitable for an assessment just because it doesn't have the volume of water to be able to push through it.
Cool. Just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Darryll. There's quite a few messages that have come through thanking you for your time from people online. So I'd like to add to that. So thank you very much. Just before, as we finish up, obviously you're more than welcome to stay online with DJ Nat and Lewis, as they'll take you through to the early hours of the morning.
This was a With Dave production.